Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning into TradeChat. My name is Panzer, and today we're going to be talking about the 2016 Q1 Investors Call for Activision-Blizzard. Now, this is something I've actually never covered on my channel before, but I'm not really sure why, because I usually follow it on a personal level. So I figured, what a fun video to make. We'd just dive deep into this together. If you follow me on Twitter, I did live tweet the whole Investors Call as it went down, but I mean, in a Panzer way, not in a professional way whatsoever. So I did want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that were brought up in the investors call. Also, not that this is super relevant to the video, but if you hear outside noises, I live in upstate New York, and we are at that lovely time of the year where it is too hot to have the windows closed, but it's not hot enough to have an air conditioner going. So you kind of have to have the windows open or else you die of heat stroke, which I guess some people on the internet would be happy if it happened, but not today. People, sirs, gentlemen, not today. Anyways, getting into the actual call, the vibe of the entire call was very upbeat. Apparently, Activision-Blizzard had a very successful start of the year, and better than expected was an actual quote. They're doing really, really well. Blizzard itself had kind of a quiet Q1, but that was to be expected because of all the launches that they have coming up in the summer and fall with Overwatch, the Warcraft movie, Legion, other things. One of my favorite facts brought up during the investors call is that the number of hours that Blizzard games are played is actually equivalent to the number of hours spent watching Netflix. And better than that, there are 4 times more hours of Blizzard games played than there are sports watched. That's all sports, all of the sports. And someone really needs to tell that asshole guy from ESPN about this because he would just lose his mind.
If I am ever forced to cover guys playing video games, I will retire and move to a rural fishing village and sell bait.
And while we're on that topic, once again, ESPN, I think it was ESPN2, aired Heroes of the Storm again this year, and the viewership was up 17% from last year. So that is a very promising statistic for Heroes of the Storm in esports. A few other things that they mentioned is that BlizzCon tickets sold out in minutes, but that's kind of an always happens thing. They talked about Legion launching in August, which we all knew was happening. But one of the things that they kind of openly admitted that we've all kind of skirted around it and implied it, but not actually outwardly said it, was that the Warcraft movie is actually an excellent marketing tool for World of Warcraft. So basically they're saying, not only is Legendary Pictures making this huge movie that's going to be super successful, but it's also going to reinvigorate the World of Warcraft community. It's going to bring back old players, it's going to interest new players, and this is not related to the investors call, but there is a bunch of rumors going around that there's going to be a bunch of in-game incentives for either pre-ordering tickets or getting the popcorn buckets or something. I know right now in oh my god, Serbia, I think they've already confirmed that there's in-game transmog items, as well as if you get the ticket, you get every version of WoW up to Warlords of Draenor. You get everything basically but Legion. So they're really pushing the Warcraft movie to help out the game World of Warcraft, which to me is actually promising. I know a lot of people would be like, oh, well, it's but honestly, for me, I think, well, how good must the movie be if they think they can bring back people who have quit, or that they can bring in new people to a 12-year-old game? I am optimistic. Blizzard focused a lot of time talking about Hearthstone during the investor call, which is not surprising because Hearthstone is extremely popular and extremely profitable. There's a bird outside. Just ignore that bird. Just ignore it. Hearthstone has produced a 20% revenue increase in Q1 year over year, and they've increased their player base by 10 million since November, bringing their total registered player base up to 50 million. Not to mention that since the launch of Whispers of the Old Gods, Hearthstone has been experiencing record daily player logins and record daily hours played, which is crazy. Hearthstone is super, super, super popular. One of the people who was on the investor call and got to ask a question actually asked, what is the average player, what is the average trend of player spending in Hearthstone? And what I found really surprising is that Mike Morhaime outwardly said, we do not discuss player spending trends in Hearthstone. And I was like, why not? And then I thought about it a lot, and I figured this was probably worth a discussion. I think the reason that they don't discuss it is I think it's a little more complex. I don't think it's just like, oh, this is the reason. I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the reasons is that there are some people who spend absolutely no money and they would kind of offset the average. Like you're really casual players that, like, to be a registered player, all you have to do is have a Battle.net account and download Hearthstone. It's not like you have to be an active regular player to be a registered player. So you'd have those kind of like non-relevant accounts in the statistic. On the other end of the spectrum, you would have the whales. And I say that endearingly because I am considered a whale in many a game, trust. Hearthstone is not one of them. League of Legends is. I spent way too much. It's embarrassing. Anyways, so there are these really people that just spend $0 at all, and then there's these people who spend way too much money, and both of those would skew the average and really screw up what the real average would be. So then do you say, okay, well, we're only going to look at people who actually spend money. But what that number is going to say to investors is going to say something completely different to the player base. If you keep the whales in that category, so if you're only looking at people who have spent money on packs, and you include everybody who's spent from 99 cents all the way up to the people who have spent thousands, and there are people who have spent thousands, I don't know what that average number would be, but to tell that number to investors would be like, oh, the average player spends, let's say it's $250, and they're absolutely thrilled. Whereas we sit back as players and we're like, we've spent $250 on this game and we don't own every card? What? How? And, there's a delicate balance. Like, you don't want to upset your investors. You don't want to upset your player base. And it's, again, one of those things where those numbers are not super indicative of anything because you've got people who play no time, or spend no money. They play a lot. Maybe they don't play a lot. I don't know. But there are people who spend $0 and you don't know how many millions of people those are. And then you've got these people who spend just far too much money. And I don't know how many of those people there are either, but you really have to like cut those off to get a real average. But that real average number would probably not make investors very happy. So it's murky waters, and it's probably for the best that they don't release that information, even though I would be very interested. Like, I would be very interested if they literally took the entire 50 million registered players, right? They took the whole entire player base and divided by 50 million, whatever the total amount, I just hit Pepe in the face, divided the total amount by 50 million to come up with an actual, like, the average player has spent X amount of money. I would like to know what that is because I would consider myself a casual Hearthstone player. I haven't actually played since Whispers of the Old Gods came out. I know, I'm sorry. It's just that other things have been going on, okay? I don't think I've even played since like Goblins versus Gnomes, but I used to play a lot. And when I did play, I probably spent $200 or $300 on packs. Like, I think that's a conservative estimate. So I can't imagine that that's totally abnormal because it's so easy to just spend $20 here and spend $20 here and spend $20 here. And there's a special that if you buy 50, then you get this card back or something. It's so easy for a lot of people to get roped into spending money. And when you're doing it in small increments, it adds up so quickly. So I feel like the reason they don't release those numbers is because there's no way that one number would make both the player base and the investors happy. And it's probably better that they don't. Moving on. Overwatch was a huge topic of discussion during the investors call, and for obvious reasons. It's in open beta currently. It launches on the 24th. And what was really interesting is they actually confirmed that there are millions, that is the quote, millions of players playing the open beta right now, which is crazy because I feel like during some of the stress test weekends, we had all those like issues and glitches, and they've now solidified their system enough to be able to handle millions of people on multiple platforms. And speaking of multiple platforms, Mike Morheim made sure to point out that Overwatch is going to be Blizzard's first simultaneous multi-platform game launch ever. And Blizzard's been around for 25 years. Like, that's crazy that this is happening. So it's going to be huge for them. And they are expecting Overwatch to be their biggest launch ever, which is, not surprising. Blizzard frequently beats their own records. I think they have held the fastest PC game sold in 24 hours for like 10 or 15 years. But Overwatch is going to be huge. And you're talking about, it's coming out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation all at the same time on the 24th. So it's going to be massive. Probably my favorite topic during the Overwatch discussion was one of the journalists actually compared the Overwatch universe to the Marvel universe. Those are not my words. those are his words. He was like, hey, do you think this could rival the Marvel Universe? I mean, you've got comics and animations, and you've got all this potential for growth. And Mike Morhaime sounded flattered, which, as a fangirl, I was like, ooh, Senpai's happy. But what was really interesting is he said, we agree, we have a lot of potential for comics. All of our animations have been very well received. The characters have a lot of lore behind them. People are really excited about the gameplay and actually playing and getting in there. But at the end of the day, Overwatch was designed for esports. Like, they intended on Overwatch being an esport when they were building it, which is very exciting for me to hear. I mean, Blizzard kind of dominated the esports scene during StarCraft and StarCraft 2's prime, and now we've seen it kind of shift to other genres, which Heroes of the Storm was a little bit late to that sort of game, even though it's still very successful in the esports world. But I am very excited to see what Overwatch is going to bring to esports. We're already seeing pro teams of other similar, like Team Fortress 2 type things, reassembling and becoming professional Overwatch teams. I think Cloud9 already has a team, but it's crazy. I mean, this game isn't even launched yet, and esports is very much something that's in mind. There are already professional teams. They've got this, they've got this whole grand plan in mind. And I don't really have a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of times when companies make claims like this, like, oh, we're going to dominate esports. You're like, oh, okay, sure. But I mean, if you've played Overwatch, or if you've seen Overwatch being played, it is such a fun and compelling game, and esports in general are so massively popular now. We were just talking about Heroes of the Dorm had a huge growth in viewership from year 1 to year 2, and we're seeing esports being almost as popular as real sports, if not more popular than real sports. And in 10 years, in 15 years, they probably will be more popular than analog sports, as I like to call them. So, I mean, we're on the cusp of something great here, and I know I'm coming from an obvious fangirl perspective. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's clear that I love Blizzard. Did you see my business Hearthstone shirt? It's a Hearthstone shirt, but I'm corporate. Anyways, so I'm very, 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 very excited for what is to come with Blizzard. This was a very positive investors call. They had a lot of good news to report. They talked, okay, I probably should mention that they did talk about things that were non-Blizzard. Activision-Blizzard is like the company, right? So they talked about Call of Duty and they talked about Destiny and nobody cares, just saying. They also talked pretty significantly about the King acquisition. If you aren't familiar, Activision-Blizzard bought King earlier this year. I think they closed on like February 28th for $5.8 billion, which is so much money. But what's crazy about that is King is such a cash cow that Blizzard is already starting to see profits on that. King has been #1 in the App Store for 9 straight quarters. They are completely dominating. In fact, Candy Crush, which is King's probably most popular game, in Q1 of 2016 was still the #3 grossing game out of all games. That's not out of mobile games or out of casual games. Out of all games, Candy Crush, a 4-year-old mobile game, was still the 3rd highest grossing game. And then, like I said, the last 9 quarters in a row, King has dominated #1 in the App Store. So whether you like it or not, that was a very, very, very good purchase on Blizzard's part. And you need to keep in mind that, all of the money that they bring in can be used for whatever they feel like it being used for. So if they want to put that into, like Activision Blizzard owns MLG, if they want to put it into MLG, if they want to put it into here, if they want to put it into there, anything that is bringing Blizzard in money is good by my books, because the more money they bring in, the more money they can spend developing games, the more money they can spend putting out content in other media. And as a fangirl, that makes me happy. That tickles my fancy. So that, I guess, was the TLDR of the investors call, which I think ended up being about as long as the investors call. But hey, we skipped over all the Call of Duty stuff, which, trust me, you didn't want to hear. Also, the guy who talked from King was really serious about casual mobile gaming, and he needed to take it from like a 10 to like a 4. Like a 4. He was at about a 10. He needed to be at a 4. Because that's how serious Candy Crush is. It was funny because he said at one point, he was like, King dominates the casual gaming mobile content world. And in my mind, I was just like, all of your mothers are being hustled. All of your moms are getting to level 278 in Candy Crush, and they're just spending their money right then and there and giving King money, because it's not us. Maybe it is us. Maybe there are whales in Candy Crush. Who knows? I'm gonna go. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to do like a recap or a review or whatever you would call this, an analyzation. I'm in my business clothes. It was an analyzation. Except that would be analysis. I do know that. Sometimes I like say words to be funny and then people are like, do you not know that's a real word? And I'm like, yeah, I know words and stuff. I just try to be more entertaining than my natural personality allows me to be. I'm gonna go. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Let me know if you liked this video. I will do more in the future if you did. I'm gonna go. I love you all. You're in my hearts. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.